Hello everyone, it's Mimi here. BMS working in the NHS. And today's video will be about the fifth module of the Section 1 in the IBMS digital registration portfolio called Professional Relationships. So, just a quick introduction to this video. It will be short and sweet, I promise. It will be focused on the learning outcomes, different types of evidence, and HCPC SOPs that need to be met in this module. We will discuss evidence justification and IBMS evidence suggestions. I will share with you some evidence ideas, and we will finish with some helpful tips to make your portfolio really good. With all that said, I hope you will enjoy the content of my video and I hope you will learn a lot. So let's dive into the fifth module of the first section. These are the learning outcomes you should be able to meet when you have completed this module. You should be able to build and sustain professional relationships that enable autonomous and collaborative working, using a range of personal transferable skills. You should be actively participating in training that supports high standards of practice, professional conduct, and positive interpersonal relationships. And you should also be able to recognize the qualities, behaviors, and benefits of effective leadership and demonstrate leadership behaviors appropriate to your practice. When you complete this module, come back to the learning outcomes to see and check that you have actually met them. This is the mandatory piece of evidence. The task is, produce a reflective statement describing how your engagement with service users and colleagues has positively contributed to your professional development. So to break it down, first part is asking you to produce a reflective statement. Find out what reflective statement is and write this in this style. IBMS has a great video about reflective writing on YouTube, so check it out. You might find it useful. Next part of the task is asking you to describe your engagement with your colleagues and service users. This is directly from your experience. How do you engage with colleagues and service users? When writing about your engagement, write it in the reflective statement style. Last part of the task is asking you to explain how engagement with colleagues and service users positively contributed to your professional development. Consider your training, CPD activities, new skill development, attending lunch presentations, quality of care through shared knowledge, attendance at MDT, collaborative environment. IBMS also offers their advice on how to approach this mandatory evidence, which I think is very good. It offers quite a few different approaches and examples that can be used, which is very helpful. First, information you are getting is telling you to write it as a reflective piece. Then the advice gives you specific examples that can be used, such as a ward or working with point-of-care testing device. I work in histology and we don't tend to go on wards and interact with patients or use POCT devices. However, we do offer ROSE FNA clinics, which could be a great examples. Then the advice is suggesting what you can talk about. So talk about what you have learned and contributed to your development. Do you now have a better understanding what is happening outside of your lab? Did this make your practice in the lab better? Use specific examples from your own practice. In the next example, the evidence type is a reflective statement. The advice is suggesting to use multiple examples of your interactions with service users and how they improved your development. Consider your types of interactions with service users first, then apply them to the development of your practice. Even a simple phone call or an email from a service user you have answered has the ability to improve your development and practice. Make sure you highlight what you have learned from it and how you are now applying this in your practice. Maybe you even shared this knowledge with your colleagues to improve the service your department offers as well, which would be fantastic. Remember, sharing is caring. The next suggested example is once again a reflective statement. You are asked to explain how you are answering patient or clinician's queries. Are you helpful, patient? Is your communication clear? Do they understand the information you are giving them? And so on. Next part of the advice is asking you to reflect how this experience improved your professional communication. Consider active listening, clear and concise talking, managing tone, and so on. Next part of the advice wants you to consider the language you use when speaking to clinicians and patients. Consider biomedical terminology, jargon, but also simple language, easily understandable by patients. The next three parts of the advice just state what you should include in this evidence, and that is: Show you can interact with different people, for example, colleagues, clinicians, or patients. Show you can use different language to communicate effectively, and show you foster positive professional relationships. Now let's talk about the SOPs that need to be met by this piece of mandatory evidence. The first standard is work in partnership with service users, carers, colleagues, and others. To meet this standard, you have to show that you can work in partnership with other colleagues or service users. Consider your approach, openness, fairness, inviting opinions and suggestions of others, sharing knowledge and information, fostering respect, clear communication, involving others in decisions, embracing diversity, dignity, collaboration, pool skills, consideration, cooperation, teamwork, and so on. How do you apply working in partnership in your practice? Give some specific examples as well, to make it more personal to you. The second standard is, understand the need to engage service users and carers in planning and evaluating diagnostics and assessment outcomes to meet their needs and goals. To meet this standard, you need to understand the necessity to engage service users and carers in their care to meet their needs and goals. Consider the beliefs, values, needs of your carer, their insights into their condition. What methods could be used to engage the service users or carers in their care? Consider shared decision-making, using accessible communication, continuous feedback to review care plans, transforming the relationship from a passive recipient to active participant, shifting focus from what is there to what matters to you to increase the relevance of health services. Can you think of the impacts this approach could have on the patient outcome? Can you think of the impacts this approach could have on the patient outcome? Consider empowerment, personalized care, improved outcome, better safety and overall satisfaction, redefined service, informed decision-making and addressed priorities. The third standard is, demonstrate awareness of the impact of pathology services on the service user care pathway. For this standard, you need to demonstrate that you are aware of the impact of pathology services on care pathway of service users. First, find out what is the impact of pathology service on the care pathway. Consider impact diagnosis, treatment options, monitoring, early detection, acute and long-term care, safety and decision-making, MDTs, POCT, personalized medicine. About 70% of healthcare decisions are based on results produced in pathology. This highlights the importance of pathology services. Especially important when errors occur and wrong result goes out. Think about the impact that could have on the service user care pathway. Try to use specific examples from your practice to demonstrate your awareness. You can also consider DATIX, nonconformists, anomaly logs, quality monitoring, and so on. Those are the standards you have to keep in mind when writing your mandatory evidence. So now that we have finished with the mandatory evidence, let's have a look at the choice evidence 2 and 3, which are candidates' choice evidence and Q&A set by the trainer. They both together have to meet 12 HCPC standards. And if you download the module descriptors for the registration portfolio from the IBMS website, you will find some example evidence suggested by the IBMS, which is very handy. The first standard is understand the need for active participation in training, supervision, and mentoring in supporting high standards of practice, and personal and professional conduct, and the importance of demonstrating this in practice. To demonstrate this standard, you need to understand the importance of active participation in training, supervision, and to support high standard of practice and conduct. You also need to understand why it is important to demonstrate it in practice. Consider professional development, maintaining high standards, promoting safe and effective practice, regulatory requirements, building confidence, creating supportive and positive learning environment, keeping skills current to date, accountability and performance, skill gaps. Consider the importance of active participation in training like evidence of competence, improved outcome, regulatory compliance, and professional growth. Then consider consequences of not participating in training, supervision, and mentoring. Consider risks of becoming outdated, high staff turnover, decreased quality and morale, performance gaps, increased error rate, and so on. The second standard is, understand the need to build and sustain professional relationships as both an autonomous practitioner and collaboratively as a member of a team. To meet this standard, you need to understand the need to build and sustain professional relationships. Ask yourself, why is it important to build and sustain professional relationships? Consider job satisfaction, well-being, increased productivity, morale, and better workplace culture, stress reduction, career growth, collaboration, employee retention, creation of supportive environment. All those are very relevant. The third standard is, contribute effectively to work undertaken as part of a multidisciplinary team. This standard requires you to work as part of a multidisciplinary team. First, find out what is multidisciplinary team and how you can work as part of it. Consider working in a group of healthcare professionals from different backgrounds, collaborative approach, working towards shared goals, clear and regular communication and meetings, mutual respect among members, value diversity and its benefits, active contribution, role clarity, action-oriented, continuous improvement and collaborative approach. Also consider open communication, active listening, respect, encourage participation, focusing on solutions, open to feedback, inclusive and so on. Try to bring in some specific examples from your practice. The fourth standard is, identify anxiety and stress in service users, carers, and colleagues, adapting their practice and providing support where appropriate. To meet this standard, you need to be able to identify anxiety and stress in others and then adapt your practice to support them where appropriate. How does anxiety and stress? Consider physical signs like tiredness, tension, sleep disturbance, headaches, or rapid breathing, behavioral signs like increased sickness, aggression, crying, withdrawal, decreased productivity, emotional or cognitive signs like worrying, feeling overwhelmed, indecisiveness, poor concentration, irritability, and others. Then think about how you would adapt your practice and interact with them if it was appropriate. Consider asking if you can help, calm and clear approach, active listening, offering practical help, avoiding judgment, patience, ask open questions, focusing on presence, reassurance, being compassionate, supportive and encouraging. The fifth standard is, understand the qualities, behaviors, and benefits of leadership. To meet this standard, you need to understand the qualities, behaviors, and benefits of leadership. What is leadership, and how does it look like? Consider integrity, self-awareness, clear communication, optimism, courage, empowerment, resilience, decisiveness, respect, having a clear vision, and so on. What are the benefits of good leadership? Consider morale, better staff retention, increased productivity, positive work culture, staff engagement, better results, teamwork, and so on. Is your practice demonstrating any of the qualities and behaviors? Why is it important you also demonstrate those in your practice? The sixth standard is, recognize that leadership is a skill all professionals can demonstrate. For this standard, you need to recognize that leadership is a skill anyone can demonstrate. Although you are very early on in your professional career as a BMS, you need to be able to demonstrate some of those skills. Try to highlight that anyone can demonstrate leadership skills, regardless of their position in workplace. Recognizing leadership as a universal and learnable skill empowers all professionals, not just managers. Can you think of any key reasons why recognizing this skill at all levels is important? Consider empowering proactive initiative, enhancing organizational order, driving performance and innovation, supporting career development, improving decision-making, enhancing career growth, or empowering all professionals. The seventh standard is, demonstrate leadership behaviors appropriate to their practice. This standard requires you to actually demonstrate leadership behaviors that are appropriate to your practice. What are the leadership behaviors you can appropriately demonstrate in your practice? Consider conflict management, integrity, decisiveness, or motivation, just to name a few. Can you give a specific example where you demonstrated those? The eighth standard is, act as a role model for others. This standard is straightforward. You need to act as a role model to others. Would you say your behavior serves as an example and source of inspiration for others? Do you set a positive example? Consider your values, behaviors, and accomplishments. Can you guide and influence people by modeling those behaviors and values? Do you inspire and motivate others through your actions and words? Consider integrity, respect, accountability, positivity, calmness, resilience, fostering growth, sharing knowledge, admitting mistakes, being a good listener, being inclusive, being encouragement, being consistent, and many others. Try to bring in some specific examples of you as a role model from your practice. The ninth standard is, promote and engage in the learning of others. Another one that is straightforward. Boy, do I wish every standard was so straightforward. Anyway, how do you engage in the learning of others? How do you promote it? Consider creating learning opportunities, group projects, mentorship, peer learning, use of communication platforms, creating engaging learning environment, encouraging reflection, promoting ownership, use of active learning techniques, creating relevant content, encouraging self-directed learning, providing supportive feedback, and so on. Do you have specific examples from your practice? The 10th standard is, recognize the value of multidisciplinary reviews, case conferences, and other methods of review. For this standard, you need to recognize the value of MDT reviews or case conferences. What are the MDT reviews and case conferences? What is their goal? Why are they performed? Consider collaborative approach of healthcare professionals to discuss and analyze patient cases, treatment plans, or safety incidents. Bring in diverse expertise, holistic approach, goal-oriented, improved decision-making, improved patient outcome, personalized care, proficiency for healthcare, continuous improvement, enhanced team collaborations, and so on. Does your department participate in multidisciplinary reviews? What value do MDT review bring into your department and for the patient? The 11th standard is, recognize the roles of other professions in health and social care and understand how they may relate to the role of biomedical scientist. For this standard, you need to recognize the roles of other healthcare professionals and how they relate to your role as a BMS. For example, consider doctors and how they interpret and diagnose patients, prescribe treatment, monitor patients. Consider nurses and how they collect and send samples, or complete request forms. Consider support staff and how they receive samples, assist BMSs during analysis, maintain equipment, or enter data. You could consider clinical scientists and how they develop and implement new techniques that BMSs can then use as well. Think about how we all come together to offer the best care possible. We all work on a shared outcome, to help the patient. To make your evidence for this standard personal, think about the type of samples you receive in your laboratory. Who is sending you those samples? Who is dealing with the results you generate? Who is making decisions based on the results? The 12th standard is, understand the structure and function of health and social care systems and services in the UK. To meet this standard, you need to understand the structure and function of health and social care systems and services in the UK. So what are health and social care systems and services? Consider the structure on the national level where you have got Department of Health and Social Care, NHS England, and Care Quality Commission. On local level where you have got integrated care boards, integrated care partnerships, and primary care networks. On providers level you have got primary care like GPs and dentists, acute trusts for complex care, community trusts like nursery or ambulance trusts, and A&E. Also consider the functions like planning and funding services to meet local needs, delivering service to provide care, regulation to ensure services meet standards, integration to join health, social and voluntary services, public health to improve population health. GP, hospitals, A&E, community services, residential care. What is their structure? Consider national bodies like Department of Health and Social Care, NHS England. On regional level you've got integrated care systems and boards. On a local level you've got primary care providers like GPs, trusts, or sector. What is their function? Consider promotion of public health, improvement in quality of life, maintaining well-being, whether it is emotional, physical, or social, prevention of illness, providing care, coordinating services, and so on. This should show your understanding. Always have those standards in mind when you are selecting a piece of evidence and then when you are writing it. Bear in mind that those two pieces of evidence you choose have to demonstrate all those 12 standards. One more thing you have to include when choosing and writing your evidence. And that is the evidence justification. For the mandatory piece of evidence, the IBMS has provided a very good justification why they would want you to do that piece of evidence. I would strongly advise you to read their justifications, as this can form the basis for how to be justifying your choice of evidence. You should also include what standards you have met by your evidence. Think about what type of evidence you have chosen, then think why you have chosen that particular evidence, and think which standards you are meeting with that evidence as well. These are some evidence suggestions from the IBMS that could be used as your choice evidence in this section. They are pretty good and can meet several standards, which is what you need. And these are some evidences ideas I would also suggest. Again, they can meet several standards as well, which is the goal. I would also like to share with you some helpful tips that can make your portfolio look really good. Try to present the information in various formats such as tables, pictures, photographs, diagrams, flowcharts, graphs, or even videos, if you can. This nicely breaks down a lot of text that is usually present in specialist portfolios. Try to make it a little bit more interesting to the reader, which will be your training officer and eventually the verifier. Try to put yourself in their shoes. How would you like to read hundreds of pages of plain text? There is a saying I really like, and it goes like this: a picture is worth 1,000 words. I will make a video where I will share with you my evidence I used for my portfolio back in the day. Hopefully that will help as well. Also try to use various types of evidence, not just one type, like case studies, for each subsection. You could use experiments, case studies, annotated results, annotated photographs of you performing tasks, evidence of troubleshooting, annotated EQA results, nonconformances, validation and verification evidence, comparisons of different approaches and their pros and cons, control material production, certificates of course attendance with reflective statements, annotated images or charts, and so on. Try to bring in your personality. Think about the ways you like to learn best. If you like experimenting, perform experiment. If you like troubleshooting, perform troubleshooting. Choose something that demonstrates your understanding, knowledge, skills, and how you apply this in your practice. And one more thing, keep the competence requirements in mind when you selecting your evidence. Good evidence will tick off several requirements. And this brings me to the end of today's video. Hopefully you now have a better understanding about the standards that are within this section and how to meet those standards with relevant evidence. And my final take-home message? Keep those standards in mind when selecting and approaching your evidence. Bye for now.